Morgan from Rocky Hill Elementary School. I teach third grade ELA and social studies. I am so happy that you are here with me, and a special big hello to any of my Rocky Hill Rams. Today we're going to do an awesome social studies activity. I know that in the past few weeks you've been learning about the colonies and a little bit about the American Revolution, and today we're going to keep going. Today we're going to focus in on 4 key figures of the American Revolution. Now some of these names you may recognize and others may be totally new. Either way, it's going to be great. Let's get started. Today we'll talk about 4 key figures of the American Revolution. Now again, lots and lots of people were involved in the American Revolution, but we are only going to focus on 4. Each of these 4 men played a really important part in the United States being an independent nation. For part 1, you'll need a few materials. First, you'll need a printed copy of the texts and the chart from KCS online. Next, you'll need a pencil, and finally, you'll need a highlighter. Don't worry if you don't have a highlighter, you can use a pencil and underline instead. As we learn about each of the 4 key figures, I want you to keep this chart in mind. Here's what we're looking for. We're looking for information about their background. Were they a farmer or a writer or a scientist? And next, we're looking for information about their contribution to the American Revolution. Keep in mind, all of these 4 men contributed to the American Revolution. So what's really important is that we understand what part each one of them played. The first key figure we'll talk about is George Washington. You can pause this video here and read the paragraph under the section heading George Washington. Once you've read the paragraph and highlighted important information, come back to this video and press play.
George Washington was born on the family plantation in Virginia in 1732. He was only 11 years old when his father died. George and his mother worked hard to keep the family's plantation running. As a young man, Washington worked as a British land surveyor and an officer in the British military, and at age 27, George Washington married Martha Custis and settled in Mount Vernon, Virginia. There, George began his service for the Virginia House of Burgesses. While life on the plantation was busy and successful, Washington was not happy with the way the British were treating the colonists. Like other patriots, Washington began to speak up about how unhappy he was with the British. At the Second Continental Congress, other leaders gave Washington the challenge of leading the Continental Army. General Washington had to work very hard to prepare his soldiers to face the well-trained British Army. He led his troops into battles carefully, and he was known for surprising the British Army when they least expected it. During the Revolutionary War, Washington became known as a strong leader. After winning the war, the Patriots were ready to crown Washington as their new king. But George refused. He knew that what this new country needed was not another king, but peace, cooperation, and calm, reasonable thinking. In 1787, George led a group of men in writing the U.S. Constitution, which laid out the framework of the United States government. 2 years later, he was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States. Because he was our first president, George Washington is often called the father of our country. On December 12, 1799, George Washington got very sick. 2 days later, he died. George Washington is remembered for his courage, wisdom, and humility. He is widely considered one of the greatest leaders in our nation's history.
Awesome, welcome back. Now that you've read a little bit about George Washington, let's fill in some important information for him on the chart. For his background and accomplishments, he started as a land surveyor and a farmer. He was also a general in the French and Indian War, and he was a member of the First and Second Continental Congress. Something really interesting about George Washington is even from the beginning, he was a reluctant leader. Yes, he absolutely believed in the causes of the American Revolution, but he didn't necessarily want to be the front man or the one who led it all. For his contribution to the American Revolution, the most obvious and the most notable, the one that he is most famous for, is being the nation's first president. He was also the leader of the Continental Army. Not only was he the leader, but he was the guy who really made it all happen. He was the one who organized the troops who were previously untrained. He also figured out where soldiers would get food and clothing. He was really important to the Continental Army. Next up, we have Thomas Jefferson. At this point, if you'll pause the video and read the section under the heading Thomas Jefferson. As soon as you're done reading, meet me back here.
Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States of America. He is considered one of the most important founding fathers and a brilliant writer. Jefferson was born in Virginia in 1743. At the young age of 25, he became a leader in the colonial government, serving in the House of Burgesses. In 1776, he was chosen as a member of the Second Continental Congress and was asked to write the Declaration of Independence. He studied many writings and books on freedom and government, and it took him 3 days to write the first draft. Many changes were made to his original document, but it was adopted on July 4, 1776. Jefferson became president in 1800. He was an anti-federal president and believed strongly that states should govern themselves instead of the government telling them what to do. One of the most important parts of Thomas Jefferson's presidency was approving the Louisiana Purchase. He bought 375 million acres for the small price of $15 million. The Louisiana Purchase added a large portion of land to the United States. Thomas Jefferson inherited a beautiful piece of land in Charlottesville, Virginia from his father after he passed away. Jefferson spent many years designing and building a plantation and home there that he called Monticello. After his death, Thomas Jefferson was buried at Monticello. Thomas Jefferson's contributions are remembered on the nickel, which has a picture of him on one side and Monticello on the other.
Great! Let's learn a little bit of information about him. Be ready to fill in the information on your chart. The background and accomplishments for Thomas Jefferson, two important things. He was both a lawyer and a writer, and him being a lawyer and a writer really impacted the way he was able to contribute to the American Revolution. One of his major contributions is that he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, of course, there was a committee of other people involved in writing this Declaration of Independence, but he was actually the one who made the first and second and probably 17 drafts. He worked day and night for 17 days, making sure that he had it just right. He took ideas from other committee members, and he formed the document himself. That's a major contribution and still a document that we look at today. Next up, we have Patrick Henry. You can pause the video here and take a minute to read the paragraph under the heading Patrick Henry. As soon as you're done, meet me back here.
Patrick Henry was born in 1736 in Virginia. He became a lawyer who later became the governor of Virginia. He was a very gifted speaker and spoke strongly against Great Britain and their rule over the colonies during the Revolutionary War. Some of Patrick Henry's most famous words were, "Give me liberty" or "Give me death." This simple phrase really spoke deeply to the colonists, and Henry became a popular speaker. He spoke with conviction and power. When Patrick Henry spoke, people listened. He was able to say what people were thinking but couldn't articulate. He was fearless and eloquent.
Let's get ready to take some notes about Patrick Henry. His background and accomplishments. First, he was a lawyer. At a young age, he began to realize that he loved to learn and read about law and politics, so he became a lawyer. He also became a great orator. Orator might be a new word for you. It means a speaker. He was great and very passionate as he spoke about things that mattered to him, specifically the American Revolution and gaining independence from Britain. Some of his major accomplishments to the American Revolution were all of his speeches. In one famous speech he gave, he had this notable quote. It says, "Give me liberty or give me death." Maybe you've heard of that quote before. He also argued against harsh laws imposed on the colonists. Finally, we have Benjamin Franklin. Take a minute and pause this video and read the section under the heading Benjamin Franklin. As soon as you're finished, get ready for a little video.
Benjamin Franklin is one of the most important people in American history. He was one of the founding fathers of our country and also a brilliant inventor. He lived a very full life and truly made America a better place to live. Benjamin Franklin was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1706. He grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and lived there almost his entire life. In 1730, he married Deborah Reed, and he had 2 children, William and Sarah. Benjamin was a brilliant inventor. He invented a wood-burning stove that could warm a home using less wood. He also invented the lightning rod. When Benjamin was 70 years old, he invented bifocal glasses. Now people didn't need to carry around 2 pairs of glasses, one to see far away and one to see close up. Benjamin put together the first fire department, owned a printing company, and also helped open the first hospital in Pennsylvania. One important medical discovery he made was learning that cold germs can be passed from person to person. Besides all of his wonderful inventions and ideas, he was also a very important person in helping America become a free country. He spent a lot of time in England and worked hard to help the colonists and Parliament come to agreements, but the United States eventually separated. We remember him by printing him on our $100 bills. In his personal life, Benjamin Franklin loved to write, taught himself to speak 3 languages, and read lots of books. Benjamin Franklin lived to be 84 years old, and he never stopped learning.
Some of his background and accomplishments, he was a lot of things. I think that's what makes him so interesting. He was a scientist, a writer, an inventor, as well as one of the founding fathers. His contribution to the American Revolution, he was part of the committee that wrote the Declaration of Independence. Maybe he wasn't the one that actually wrote down the document. That was Thomas Jefferson. But he was definitely one of those men that gave his input and wrote down important points to put in the document. He's also attributed with having the Stamp Act repealed. The Stamp Act was a law that the colonists really did not agree with that was being imposed on them from Great Britain. And he was the one who made sure that that Stamp Act got repealed. Now that we've learned a little bit about 4 key figures of the American Revolution, it's time to take everything we've learned and put it together. So I have a question for you, and as soon as you hear me explain the question, you can pause the video and do your writing. And remember, write in complete sentences. Here's the question. What did all of these key figures have in common? I know that they all had different backgrounds and different contributions, but they had some main goals in common. What was their common goal, and how did they work to achieve it? I'll give you some think time, and you can start your writing. You guys have done a great job with part 1. Now that we know some basic information about our 4 key figures of the American Revolution, it's time to take that information and put it to work. For part 2, you only need a few materials. You just need a copy of the images from the KCS website and a pencil. Your directions for part 2 are really fun. You're going to look at each of 4 images and try to figure out what in the world is going on. Each image shows one or more of our key figures of the American Revolution, and each image also shows a really important event from the American Revolution. And it's your job to figure out who is shown in the pictures and what's going on. We'll do one image at a time. Let's get started. Look carefully at image 1. As I'm looking at image 1, there are a few things that I notice. One of the first things that I notice is that all the men in the image seem to be dressed up. Now, why would everyone be dressed up? Maybe it's some type of important ceremony or event. What kind of important ceremonies or events have I read about? Who could be involved? Another thing I notice as I look at this image is that one man seems to be in the center of the image and he's commanding the attention. It looks like he has his hand on a book and that he's reciting something. Everyone else in the image seems to have their eyes on him. You can pause this video and record your thoughts. Be sure to include the different key figures that you think could be in this image. look carefully at image 2. As I look at image 2, I immediately notice that lots of the men seem to have their hands in the air. Now, why would they have their hands in the air? It looks to me like maybe they're mad or upset or excited. It also looks to me like there's one man who's doing most of the talking. What key figure have I learned about that was a great speaker? Take some time to look at image 2 and record your thoughts. Be sure to include which key figure could be involved in this image. Now let's look carefully at image 3. Immediately I notice that image 3 looks really different. This image doesn't seem to be inside. It seems to be outside. What's going on? I think I see a kite and maybe a storm. It looks like these people might be experimenting. Which key figures have I read about that like to experiment with science or inventions? Take a few minutes to look closely at this image and record your thoughts. Be sure to include which key figure might be involved. Now let's look carefully at image 4. In this image, it looks like the look on everyone's faces is very serious, like they're deep in thought or working hard on something. It looks like they're all sitting around a table working together, and it looks to me like there's a big document in the center. I can't tell if it's written all the way or written part of the way. Let me take a minute and think. Which key figures do I know about who wrote an important document? You can pause this video and take a few moments to write down your thoughts. Awesome job! You've done some great work. Now I have a few extension activities for you. These involve a little bit of writing and a little bit of drawing. The first extension activity is to create a comic strip. Be sure to include a few key figures that you've learned about. You can choose one or more. The comic strip should be about an important event that contributed to the American Revolution. The second extension activity option is to create a stamp. Your stamp should honor and recognize one of the 4 key figures we've learned about. Your stamp can include pictures, words, symbols, or other artwork. Good luck!